So in preparation for tomorrow's quiz, I first wanted to go over one of the homework questions from last night's homework on page 146 in our practice book. A few of you guys mentioned to me that you had questions on this, on number 5 from this page. So that's where we're gonna start today in preparation for tomorrow's quiz. That's page 146 from our practice book. The question states, the width of this rectangle is 1/3 of the length. Find the length and the width of the rectangle. This here is the length, and this is the width. Okay? The width of this rectangle is 1/3 of the length. So the length, 2y plus 6, is going to be equal to, remember the word of is a cue for multiplication. So that means that the width is going to be 1/3 of the length. So 1/3 times the length is going to give you the width, which is y minus 4. Again, 1/3 of the length, of meaning to multiply, 1/3 of the length, this is the length, is equal to the width. Okay, so that's what I did here, and now all I'm going to do is to simplify this. So there's multiple ways to simplify this. You could multiply by the inverse of 1/3 on both sides, multiply by 3 on both sides to get rid of this 1/3, or you can distribute this 1/3 and then simplify further. I would normally distribute just because that's the way I was taught as a kid, but I think that the more that we practice together on these type of problems, I'm realizing that especially when it's a fraction on the outside of the parentheses, the easiest thing to do is to multiply by the inverse. So I'm going to do that. Multiply by the inverse of 1/3, which is 3/1. And I'm going to do that on both sides because whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Oops, that's a 1. That's a 1. So that 3/1 on the left side is going to cancel out that 1/3. These cancel each other out, okay? So on the left side of the equation, I am left with 2y plus 6. On the right side, now I have 3/1 on the outside, which is the same thing as just having a plain old 3. I need to distribute that 3 to both parts of the expression. So I have on the left side 2y plus 6 equals to, this is 3 times y, which is 3y, minus, because this is negative and this is positive, so -4 times 3 gives us a -12. Now that I have 2y plus 6 equals 3y minus 12, I can combine my y's or combine my digits. I'm going to combine my y's by subtracting 2y on both sides. It's best if you try to keep your variable positive just so that you don't have to divide by a negative number later. So the best thing to do, instead of subtracting 3y over here, it's easier if you subtract 2y so that you don't end up with a negative y. It just makes it harder if you have a negative variable. You could definitely still do it. It's just easier if you avoid having a negative variable. So now these two y's cancel out because I had a positive and I was subtracting away from it. That gives me 0, so that doesn't need to be written. And then I bring down my 6, which equals 3y minus 2y, which is 1y, minus 12. Now that 12, I'm going to add it on both sides. And simplify. These 12s cancel out. Then I have 6 plus 12 on the left side, which is 18. And that's going to be equal to y, because 1y is the same thing as just y by itself. So y equals 18. Now I'm going to go back up to that question because they're not asking me what y is. Nowhere up here did they say figure out what y is or what does y represent. They said find the length and the width of the rectangle. This is very important because you're going to have a question just like this on tomorrow's quiz. So please pay attention to this next step. If you leave it just as y equals 18, you haven't completed the problem. So y equals 18. Now they want us to tell what is the value of L and what is the value of W. length and width. So in order to do that, you need to take your length, which is 2y plus 6, and you need to plug in 18 for y. This is for the length. Okay? 2 times 18 is 36. Plus 6 is 42. So the length of this rectangle is 42 inches. I'm going to write that down here in my solution. The length of this rectangle is 42 inches. The length of this rectangle is 42 inches. Now we need to solve for the width. The width originally was y minus 4. So I'm going to do that here. Width y minus 4. I'm going to plug in my 18 for y and then subtract 4. So my width will give me 18 minus 4. That's 14 inches. Okay, I'm going to write that down here. The width of the rectangle is 14 inches. Okay, remember, you are solving for y, but then you have to plug that in here, and then you have to plug it in again. This is a 4 or 5 step problem because originally they didn't even tell us what the equation was. We had to figure out what the equation was based on the story. It said the width of the rectangle is 1/3 of the length. So I took that 1/3, multiplied it by the length because of is a clue for multiplication. So 1/3 of 2y plus 6 equals y minus 4. We solved and got y by itself. Then we took that y and we plugged it in for y in the length section of the problem, and we plugged it in for y in the width section of the problem in order to figure out the numerical value of the length and the width for this problem. Okay, in your Google Classroom, I did post in the Math Google Classroom this sheet of review questions that I'm going to go over today in preparation for tomorrow's quiz. So the next question I'm going to go over is number 1 on that review sheet. It states, the two shapes listed below have the same perimeter. The perimeter of the square is 4 times x plus 4, and the perimeter of the triangle is 2 times 5x plus 2. What is the perimeter of each figure? So the best thing for me to do when they're talking about shapes and they don't give me the shape, I always draw a picture. It just makes it easier for me. In fact, you know, one thing I haven't tried yet with these videos is turning my camera horizontally, so I'm going to try that now. Okay, hopefully that doesn't mess up the way that you're viewing this video, but I'm going to do my best to film it without shaking my hand. Haha. Okay, so again, like I said, they don't give you the shapes, but for me, it's easier if I draw the shapes. So say I have a square. Remember, squares are not rectangles. I almost drew a rectangle. That's the best you're going to get out of me today. And they're saying that the perimeter of this square equals 4 times x plus 4. I'm not even going to worry about the sides because they didn't say anything about the sides. It doesn't matter. I'm just drawing the square so I have a visual so I can see what they're talking about. The perimeter of the triangle, so there's a triangle. Doesn't matter what it looks like. It just has to be a triangle. The perimeter of the triangle is 2 times 5x plus 2. So P here would equal 2 times 5x plus 2. Okay. These two shapes have the same perimeter. Same is a clue for the word equals. They're telling us that this is equal to this. So I'm going to write that out. 4x plus 4 is equal to 2 times 5x plus 2. Okay, that's what they are telling us by saying that the perimeters are the same. Okay, we have one perimeter, we have two perimeters. They're asking us to figure out what is the perimeter of each figure. In order to figure out the perimeter of each figure, this is similar to the problem I just went over in the practice book, but in order to figure out that perimeter, we first have to figure out what x is. So on the problem that we just did from the practice book, I utilized inverse operations to simplify this right off the bat. Instead of doing that, I'm going to use the distributive property. So I'm going to distribute that 4 to the x and the 4 within the parentheses. And for the right side of the equation, I'm going to distribute that 2 to the 5x and to the 2. So when I simplify that, that means that 4 is being multiplied times x, which gives me 4x. 4 is being multiplied times 4, which gives me positive 16. And on the right side, I have 2 being multiplied times 5x, which gives me 10x. And then 2 being multiplied times 2, which gives me 4. Okay, now that I've distributed, it's a lot easier to simplify. I just need to get my x's together on one side of the equation and my regular digits by themselves together on the other side of the equation. So I'm going to do that by subtracting my 4x on both sides. As I explained in the previous problem, it's easier to subtract the smaller number to the other side in order to try and keep x positive, or whatever variable you have. It's easier if you keep it positive because it saves you a step later. If you had a negative variable, then later you would have to get rid of that negative before you would have your final answer. So anyways, these 4 x's cancel out. I'm left with 16 on the left side. And on the right side, I have 10x minus 4x, which is 6x. And I bring down my plus 4. I'm kind of running out of room, so I'm going to try and squeeze it in here. I should have wrote smaller. You guys know how I struggle with that. So I'm going to subtract by 4 on both sides. And that's going to give me 12 equals 6x. I'm going to actually rewrite this up here so I can kind of finish this. So this is, I'm going to just write it over here where I have space. So I have 12 equals 6x. I'm just continuing down here as if I had more space. I would keep writing down. So I have 12 equals 6x. In order to get this x by itself, I have to do the opposite of what's happening here. And what's happening here is multiplication. So in order to get rid of that 6, I have to divide by 6 on both sides. Now I have these 6's that cancel out, and I have x equals 12 divided by 6, which is 2. So I'm going to just like bubble it. That doesn't mean it's the answer. I'm just bubbling it because it's important information. And I don't want it to get lost in this big mess that I made over here, okay? Is this my answer? No, because they didn't ask me what does x equal or what is the missing value of x or anything related to the variable. They asked me, what is the perimeter of each figure? In order to figure out the perimeter of the square, I need to take the perimeter of the square and then plug in 2 for x like I did in the previous problem. So I'm going to take my perimeter of my square, 4 times x plus 4, and I'm going to plug in 2 because that's what x is. Okay? Now that I've plugged in 2, we got to follow PEMDAS, which tells us to do what's inside the parentheses first. And I have 4 plus 2, so that's going to give me 6. And then whatever is on the outside of the parentheses, these are being multiplied because it's just touching, and when they're touching, it's just multiplication. So 4 times 26 is 24. Okay? That's the perimeter of the square. I'm going to just put P of square equals, just to save myself some space. Okay, the triangle has a perimeter of 2 times 5x plus 2. I'm going to plug in that 2 next to the 5 where the x is at. And now I'm going to complete what's inside the parentheses first. 5 times 2 has to come first because remember PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication. So multiplication is the first one that happens within these parentheses. 5 times 2 is 10. My camera's blurry. There we go. 5 times 2 is 10. And then I'm going to add this 2, which gives me 12 inside my parentheses. Bring down the 2. Now I have 2 being multiplied times 12, which gives me 24. My perimeter of the triangle is equal to 24. Now, does that make sense? Well, it said up here that the square and the triangle had the same perimeter. So the fact that I got 24 for both of these tells me that I probably did this problem right, because I basically checked my answer by doing it this way. Because I could have just said, oh, parentheses of the square is 24, they have the same perimeter, all right, 24 is the answer. But I did it for the triangle too, which is a way of checking my answer. Okay, number 2 on this worksheet or on this review page says, determine whether the solution of each equation below is the same as the solution of 5x equals 40 minus 3x. This is very similar to your homework from last night as well. You had a question like this, I think. Something similar. A little similar, a little different, but pretty close. In this case, they're telling you, tell whether these choices match this equation here. And my tip for doing a problem like this is to figure out what x is and then plug it in. Just like we did up here where we figured out what x is, what x was, and then we plugged it in for the perimeter, we're going to do that here. We're going to figure out what x is and plug it into each of these choices and then say, did it make sense? Yes or no. So I'm going to take my 5x equals 40 minus 3x, and I'm solving for x. So I'm going to add my 3x on both sides to get my x's together. I'm adding 5x plus 3x is 8x. Then I have 40 needs to be brought down because the 3x's canceled out. And now I just need to divide by 8 on both sides to get my x by itself, and I am left with x equals 5. Okay, this is important information. I'm not like circling it because it's my answer. I'm just gonna bubble it to remind you that this is very important information. Okay, looking at question or part A of this question, I have 7x plus 6 equals 9x minus 2. I'm gonna plug in this 5 everywhere that there is an x. So I'm gonna take this 7 times 5 plus 6 equals 9 times 5 plus, oh, it's not plus, it's minus. Let me get my handy dandy white out. Be careful with those symbols because you could easily make a mistake like I almost did. It's minus 2, so I'm going to double check it. 7 times x plus 6 equals 9 times x minus 2. Okay, now that I've filled in my x's, I can solve and see, does it match? So 7 times 5 is 35. I'll just write it. 35 plus 6 equals, and 9 times 5 is 45, and then bring down the minus 2. Now I'm going to simplify. I couldn't think of the word. Simplify this side. 45 minus 2 is 43, and on the right side, 35 plus 6 is 41. Those are not equal, and if it is not equal, that means that it would be no. Okay, because that means that this 5 was not true for A. If it's not true, then it would be no. Now we're going to look at B. Okay, 5x minus 20 equals x. Okay, plugging in that 5 for everywhere I see an x. I got a 5 on the right side of the equation, and then it should look like that. 5 times 5 minus 20 equals 5. 5 times 5 is 25. I'm going to simplify that, and then minus 20 equals 5. 25 minus 20 equals 5. So 5 equals 5. That's true. I'm going to put a little check mark there. That means that the answer here would be yes. Yes, it is the same. That's what they're asking. Same as the solution. Yes, it is. The first one was no. This one is yes, because this is a true statement. And true statements mean that this was correct for that specific equation. Now we have one more here. C, 2x minus 15 equals 20 minus 5x. First thing we got to do is plug in that 5 wherever we see an X. Okay, and then we can simplify. So 2 times 5, that gives us 10. Then we have negative 5 times 5, which is 25. Oh, and then I gotta bring down the 20. Sorry, I was having a pause. Like, my brain is like, wait, what? But it makes sense so far. Just double checking. 2 times 5 is 10. Bring down the minus 15. Bring down my 20. And then negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. Okay. 10 minus 15 gives me negative 5. 20 times negative 25 20 minus 25 gives me negative 5. Again, that's 10 minus 15 gives me negative 5, and 20 minus 25 gives me negative 5. This is a true statement, which means that C would be a yes, because using x equals 5 from the original equation, I plugged it in and I got these two that were true. Okay, for the next problem I'm going to go over is number 4 from page 128 of your instruction book. This is your assignment for today. I'm going to go over 2 questions from today's assignment, and then you will be asked to complete those 2 pages on your own after you watch this video. So I'm going to cross out this 8 because that's wrong. So the next one I'm going to go over is number 4 from page 128 of your instruction book. I was going to do it on scratch paper, but now I'm thinking I can just do it in the book. So give me 1 second. Okay, this question is very important. I think, for my personal opinion, this is going to be maybe one of the hardest questions on the quiz tomorrow. So if after watching this video you still feel like confused, feel free to email me or Gmail chat me with any questions you may have. So it says, consider the equation 2 times 4x minus 5 equals ax plus b. From the list of digits provided, determine the values of a and b that make the solution to this equation x equals 3. Okay, first thing we have to do is take our equation. I always write it down because it just makes it easier for me to look at if it's written in my handwriting for some reason. Okay. 2 times 4x minus 5 equals ax plus b. So they're saying that they want x to equal 3. So everywhere that there's an x, I'm going to plug in that 3. So far I put a 3 right there for that x. And now I have a times 3 plus b. Okay. Now I'm going to simplify the left side of the equation, because the right side, there's nothing at the moment that I can easily simplify, so I'm going to start with the left side. Inside the parentheses, I have 4 times 3, which is 12, and then minus 5. So this is 12. I'm just going to draw it. This is 12, and then 12 minus 5 is 7. So I have 7 on the inside of the parentheses. I still have the 2 on the outside, and that's equal to a times 3 plus b. Sorry, it's a little messy. 2 times 7 is 14, so I can simplify that one more time. A times 3 on the right side plus b. So now I have 14 equals a times 3 plus b. You don't want to mess with your a and b too much, just because you don't need to. So what you can do now that you've simplified the left side as much as you can, you've simplified as much as you can without messing with the a and b too much. So now you're going to look at these choices, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and say, which of these can I plug in for a, and which of these can I plug in for b that will make this side of the equation equal 14. So I'm just going to start with 0, because it's the easiest choice, or it's the first choice. If I plug in 0 for a, is there any answer choice left that will work and give me 14. So 0 here, 0 times 3 gives me 0. There's nothing that can be, I would have to have a 14 in that box to give me this 14 on the left side. So it's not going to be 0 for A, but 0 might be the answer choice for B. So we're not going to count it out 100% just yet. Now I'm going to try that 1. If I plug in a 1 for A, 1 times 3 is 3. This would have to be an 11 for this 1 to work, and there's no 11s in the box. So far, 1 cannot be plugged in for A because it just won't, there's no answer choice in the box that will make that equal to 14. So 1 doesn't work for A. I'm going to look at 2. 2 plugged in for A, 2 times 3 is 6. In order for this to work with a 2 here, to give me a 6, this B would have to be 8, right? Because 8 plus 6 equals 14, but there is no 8 in this box. So 2 does not work for A. In fact, you know what? I'm just gonna, we're looking at for A, so this is a so far, and this one is a because we're looking for A, right? And so far, 0 didn't work, 1 didn't work, 2 didn't work. We're gonna look at 3. If I plug in a 3 for A, 3 times 3 is 9. In order for B to be added with 9 to equal 14, B would have to be a 5. There's no 5s in the box. So far, that didn't work out, right? I plugged in a 3 here, I got 9. B would have to be 5, there's no 5 in the box. No, 3 wouldn't work for A. So we're going to try 4. We're going to try plugging in 4 here. If I plug in 4, 4 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to plug it in. 4 times 3 is 12, right? 12 plus, well, this would have to be, if I have that equal to 14, 12 would have to be added with 2. Is there a 2 in the box? Yes. There is a 2 in the box. That means that A is equal to 4 and B is equal to 2. A is equal to 4 and B is equal to 2. Do you see how we did process of elimination? But that was a little bit hard because I was like doing mental math with you. I didn't want to write down every single one just because I didn't have space. But when you do this, you can have a piece of scratch paper next to you and you can literally practice plugging in every number and mixing them around and flip-flopping them and seeing which one of these is going to make this statement true. Okay, so I just had, you kind of have to just guess and check. 12 plus 2 gives us 14, and then 14 equals 14. That's how I did this problem. You can have another way to do this problem. There might be another way to do it. I don't know. There probably is, because that's how math works, especially this kind of math. Okay, the next problem we're going to do is on page, this was on page 128 of our instruction book. The next one is on page 129. We are going to complete problem 5 together in preparation for tomorrow's quiz. Problem number 5 on page 129. So far, with my camera being sideways, it's a lot easier to record. I just thought I would share that with you guys. So number 5 says, solve the equation x plus 0.7 equals 1 minus 0.2x in 2 different ways. 2 different ways. Then check your answer, okay? One thing you gotta always do is write down the problem. Okay, and I'm gonna like just draw a line down the middle because I kind of have to use this space for both problems. So I'm gonna try to control myself here with the size of my handwriting. Okay, hopefully this video is not upside down. I just realized that there is a possibility that it might be upside down for you guys. Wish me luck. Okay, anyways, back to this. I have x plus 0.7 equals 1 minus 0.2x. So I want to combine my x's. This one is negative and this one is positive. So the easiest thing to do is to add 0.2x on both sides. Okay? These cancel out. And on the left side, I have 1x plus 0.2x, which gives me 1.2x. Bring down the plus 0.7, and then bring down the equals 1. Next thing I'm going to do is subtract my 0.7 on both sides because I'm trying to get my x by itself. Now I'm left with 1.2x is equal to 1 minus 0.7. That equals 0.3. You can check your calculator if you do not trust me, and I don't blame you because it's always good to double check, especially because I always make mistakes. Okay. Next thing we want to do is get rid of that 1.2 on both sides, and in order to do that, we must divide because they are being multiplied. So we're going to divide 1.2 on both sides. These cancel out, and now we have x equals 0.3 divided by 1.2. This one I cannot do in my brain, so I'm going to grab my handy-dandy calculator. Okay, I'm back with my handy-dandy calculator. 0.3 divided by 1.2 equals 0.25. 0.25. For some reason, I'm going to double check if that's the answer because I'm not feeling too confident about that decimal. Oh no, according to the textbook, that is the answer. So 0.25 is correct. Okay. Let's now remember, solve in two different ways. That's why I drew a line down my paper. So we're going to have to try and do this another way, which is one form of checking our answer. The other form of checking our answer would be to plug this in up here, but they want us to show our work in two different ways. So I'm going to go back up to the top and rewrite my equation. X plus 0.7 equals 1 minus 0.2x. So one trick when you're working with decimals that you can do in order to get rid of the decimal, you can multiply by 10 on both sides, usually 10 or 100, depending on how many decimal places are after the, well, how many digits are after the decimal. But in this case, there's only one digit after the decimal, so the trick to this is to multiply by 10 on both sides. So we're going to multiply by 10 on both sides and utilize the distributive property to do this problem, to simplify. So 10 times x is 10x, and 0.4 times 10, that's a 7. Why did I say 4? 0.7 times 10 is 7. Now we're going to put that equals to, on the right side, 10 times 1 is 10. 10 times negative 0.2x is going to be negative. Okay, now we just have to simplify. So we're going to add by 2x on both sides. This gives me 12x on the left, and on the right I have 10. These cancel out, and I'm going to bring down my plus 7. I'm going to subtract by 7 on both sides because, again, my goal is to get that x by itself. These cancel out. 10 minus 7 is 3. Bring down my 12x. Divide by 12 on both sides. And 3 divided by 12 can be reduced to 1/4. These 12s cancel out. So I'm left with x equals 1/4. And guess what? 1/4 equals 0.25. So now we have shown that we can find the answer using two different methods. One is the distributive property. The other is by immediately simplifying. Our solution comes out to x equals 0.25, which we can put equals 1/4 if we want to. Okay. That brings me to the last problem I'm going to be going over today, which is number 5 on that review sheet that I had posted in the Google Classroom yesterday. It says the shorter sides of a rectangle are 6x plus 1 inches long. The longer sides of the rectangle are 2 times longer than the shorter side. The perimeter of the rectangle is 78 inches. What is the length of each of the longer sides of the rectangle? Again, I swear, whenever they give me a question about a shape and the shape is not given, I don't care what the question's asking. I always draw the shape because I need something to look at. They said it's a rectangle. I'm gonna draw me a rectangle. The shorter sides of a rectangle are 6x plus 1. Shorter sides. Okay, got it. 6x plus 1. The longer sides of the rectangle are 2 times longer than the shorter side. Okay, well, the shorter side is this long, but the longer side is 2 times that. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 6x plus 1 because that's what they told me to do. And then the perimeter of the rectangle is equal to 78 inches. So the perimeter of this rectangle equals 78 inches. Now I can solve because I can say that this plus this side down here. Don't forget about side number 3 and side number 4. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. 2 times 6x plus 1 plus 2 times 6x plus 1 plus 6x plus 1 plus 6x plus 1. Okay, 4 sides of a rectangle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pieces of information written down. Okay, and all of those are going to be equal to 78. I probably could have wrote smaller. You guys know I struggle with that. Okay, next thing I'm going to do before I can start adding and subtracting things together, I have to do the multiplication first because remember, we got PEMDAS. Okay, and we got to look at the parentheses first. But we can't do the inside until we get rid of this multiplication that's happening here because remember, multiplication comes before addition and subtraction. So I'm going to multiply this in using the distributive property. So 2 times 6x is 12x and 2 times 1 is 2. Same thing's going to come out on this because this was the exact same as that. So I'm going to have 12x plus 2. And then I can bring down the other pieces of information. And I don't need the parentheses anymore because we're just adding all the way across. You guys see that? 12x plus 2, blah, 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 plus. And then I'm going to bring down my equals 78. Okay? All right. Next thing we want to do is add all our x's together. So I have 12x plus 12x plus 6x plus 6x. 12 plus 12... that's 24. 24, and then 6 plus 6 is 12. So 12 plus 24 gives me 36. So I have 36x. Remember, 12 plus 12 plus 6 plus 6 gives me 36. Then I'm going to do the rest of the digits. 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have plus 6 left from those, and that equals 78. Because don't forget that 78. Now that I have all my x's together and all my digits together, my rate, like, I don't know what to call those, my normal numbers, whatever you want to call them, I can subtract this 6 on both sides. That leaves me with 36x equals 72. What I tell you guys about me writing too big? I don't know what I'm going to do about myself. All right, let me get me some scratch paper here. Here we go. I'll make it work. I'm going to keep going down. 36x equals 72. Having some hard time here, guys. All right, I'll just rewrite it right here. 36x equals 72. All right, there we go. That's what I'm going to keep going down. Divide by 36 on both sides. You probably already knew that because you're smarticles. Now I have x equals whatever 72 divided by 36 is. I think that's 2. Yes, it is. Let's double check with our calculators because it doesn't ever hurt to check. But 72 divided by 36 equals 2. Okay, so I have x equals 2. Is this the answer? You wish it was, but it is not. And I'm sorry, my friends, but it is not. We need to use this information now to answer the question. The question was, I'm going to remind you, what is the length of each of the longer sides of the rectangle? Okay, so is this the longer side? No. Look at that picture that I drew for you guys, that beautiful work of art. That is the shorter side. So we're going to look at the longer side, 2 times 6x plus 1. I'm going to even write longer side. That's what we're looking at. Longer side, 2 times 6x plus 1. And we're going to plug in that 2 because we figured out that x equals 2. Now we're going to plug that in. 2 times 6 times 2 plus 1. So now I have 6 times 2, which is 12, plus 1, which is, don't forget the 2. 12 plus 1 is 13. Bring down that 2 on the outside. 2 times 13 is 26. The answer to this problem should be 26 inches. Question was, what is the length of each of the longer sides of the rectangle? Each of the longer sides are 26 inches long, okay? That concludes today's review for the quiz. If you guys have any questions about any of the problems I went over today, feel free to email me or Gmail chat me. Don't forget that today's assignment is to complete pages, the ones I was just going over, which I don't know why I don't have a sticky note on that page. 100 and I remember 128. I just did a problem on that page, 128 and 129. Your assignment is to finish these 2 pages, take a picture of your completed work, and submit it on Google Classroom. There will be a place, well, there is a place now on Google Classroom for you to take a picture of these and submit them and it will be due tomorrow at 8 a.m. in the morning before your quiz. Again, if you have any questions and you don't want to email me, you don't want to Gmail chat me because you don't like talking to me, you could ask me your question tomorrow before the quiz. And please be ready to join the Google Meet at 9 a.m. because I have a few things I want to talk to you guys about before we start the quiz. All right. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.